VDH, how you doing? Good to talk to you, my friend.
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me, Laura.
Well, so Biden yesterday was it yesterday we were speaking? Yeah, Biden yesterday was
Saturday.
Oh, sorry. It was on Saturday, his real kickoff of his campaign. I thought he kicked it off weeks ago. It's kind of his real kickoff. So Biden comes out and says, well, this is our economy. This is the Obama-Biden economy. Does that fly in any way, shape, or form?
No, but what is he going to run on? I mean, is he going to say the stock market's too high, or GDP is too high, or unemployment's too low, or we producing too much oil and gas? Or if he looks abroad, he's not going to be able to say, God, we got to get back in that Paris Accord, or we got to get that embassy back to Tel Aviv, things like that. So the only thing he can say is the manner in which we're succeeding is kind of icky or creepy, or Trump tweets too much, and that's the narrative that he has. The problem, I think, is Trump at 72 is 60, and Biden at 77 is about 80 or 90. And second, he's a divider. I mean, he's the guy who on 2 occasions said he was going to take Trump behind the gym and beat him up. And he's got a whole history of gas and racialist comments. And then besides all that, he's failed twice. So he's a front runner, but he has a history of being a kind of a popular media candidate and then imploding. But you can see, and I don't really buy the idea that the Democratic Party is suddenly centrist and that he represents, that's why he's ahead, because I think he's just the only person there that's running on a halfway, or maybe a quarter way, same platform. But if you combined all the others, their votes are more than Biden. And so he's viable as long as all of these leftists are in the race. But when you start to see them drop out, and you get a Bernie versus him, or Elizabeth Warren versus him, or I don't know who else, but
Kamala.
Then I think he's not going to be good old Joe of the 1980s, which he's now apparently is trying to renounce and repudiate anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, he yesterday came out for doing away with the Hyde Amendment. So that's how radical the man has turned. And I don't even think he believes that, but he feels like he has to mouth that. So now American taxpayers are going to have to pay for abortions overseas. Do you think people who are even pro-choice want that? I don't get that at all. How is that a winning position?
I don't either. And then on the late-term abortion and the de facto infanticide, it's like Dr. Gosnell never broke any laws. You know what I mean? He just did what they're advocating. And that's what I don't understand. That was so repulsive, that case of him actually destroying children as they were in the womb and outside the birth canal. And yet they're saying, well, it's a very small percentage, and 6,000 or 7,000 incidents per year. That's more than people die of particular types of cancer every year. But I don't understand that position, other than what you suggest, that when whoever gets in the general election, they're going to try to moderate it. And like Mayor Pete did the other day when he said, well, Jefferson, I don't mean that I'm going to take his name off everything, but that's exactly what he meant. And so they say certain things, and then, like all politicians, are going to have to modulate them. But the $64,000 question: how crazy will they sound, and can they repudiate how they sound in the general election? But so far, I don't think they're doing a very good job of it. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, again, he has had quite a spectacular transformation in his views. We're talking about Joe Biden with Victor Davis Hanson here on the Laura Ingraham podcast. And like so many Democrats on issues of trade, on issues of China, on issues of interventionism, on issues of even sanctuary cities. This was Biden in 2007. Let's listen.
I'd like to hear from Senator Biden. Would you allow these cities to ignore the federal law?
The reason the cities ignore the federal law is the fact that there is no funding at the federal level to provide for the kind of enforcement at the federal level you need. Part of the problem is you have to have a federal government that can enforce laws.
So, Senator Biden, yes or no, would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
Yeah, so he said no, he wouldn't. But today, of course, they're the great heroes of our against our dictatorial immigration system, the sanctuary cities.
Yeah, but that was almost a decade ago. So we've had about 800,000 people come into the United States. And so we're talking about almost 11 million people that are here. And so this whole democratic metamorphosis is based on electoral reality. A lot of these people have got green cards, or they're de facto voting in local election, or their children now, or some of them came here at 5 illegally there, or they were born here. So we have a whole new generation. So for the Democratic Party, it has nothing to do with whether you want a sovereign nation and closed borders and states to follow federal law, but flipping Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada blue. And they think it's a pretty good strategy. And they're never, ever going to go back to what we just heard from Joe Biden, at least not in our lifetime, because they feel that there's no, I don't know, the La Raza ethnic lobby doesn't want it. Mexican government doesn't want it. The Democratic operatives don't want it. And so there's nothing in it for them other than principle and patriotism, and they're not big on that. So it's going to get even crazier. But it is interesting when you play that to see that when the numbers weren't quite as acute as they are now, they sounded reasonable. At least some of them did.
Well, we found out through a report yesterday that a third of migrants faked family relationship with the children they crossed the border with. That doesn't surprise me at all. When I was in Del Rio, Texas, a couple weeks ago, I spoke to a few of the migrants that the kids looked really uncomfortable, more so than just being in a foreign place. But there's something in their eyes didn't look right. So I went up and started talking to them in Spanish. And I can't, what am I can't do anything. I'm just a citizen, like, reporting on it. But if I had to bet, I would have bet those kids had no relationship with the adult they were with. They were scared. They were scared kids. Scared beyond just being in a foreign country.
It's a general rule that almost everything we hear about illegal immigration, unfortunately, is not accurate. About the numbers, about the circumstances under which people come as quote-unquote refugees, about the degree of criminality that occurs among illegal immigrants. It's just not true, and it's considered a noble lie that what does it matter if the real truth is that we're going to let, deserving people in the United States. That's the narrative. And I live it every day, Laura. When I go out, I'm told that illegal immigrants do not throw trash. They would never do that. And I pick up mounds of trash out in front of my farm. I have the addresses of the people. They put their power bills in. I know exactly where they live. The sheriff doesn't do anything. I have 6 dogs right now that were dumped on my property. So it's not a big thing, but that's what happens when you have large numbers of unassimilated immigrants who came in illegally in large numbers that are not diverse. It would really work if we had people coming from Korea or Africa or Europe, all coming legally, all in measured numbers, all mixed up, and they would assimilate. But that's not what's happening. We're getting huge groups of one language, one culture, coming across the border illegally. The first thing they do is break the law. The second thing they do is reside illegally and break the law. And they know it. And so their attitude is, if I break the law in coming and I break another law in residing, why do I have to follow any other laws? And they feel a sense of exemption. I talk to them. I've taken trash and said, don't throw it on here, and delivered it to their house. And the attitude is, why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. So I think basic human nature says if somebody is exempt, at no point does he feel that he should not be exempt from any other law.
In Guatemala, Victor, in Guatemala, where I've spent the most time, El Salvador in the 80s, but Guatemala most recently, what's shocking is both how beautiful the country is, spectacularly beautiful, mountains, water, lakes, ancient villages and cities, the ancient capital, and how there is, and it's part of this corrupt government and no sense of civic pride because of the way things have gone for so long there. But people just take their trash and dump it down pristine ravines. I'm talking about waterfalls and beautiful rainforest-like terrain. And my daughter and I are driving up this mountain about 4 hours outside of Guatemala City. The trash is just dumped. I mean, and again, it's just like a forest. And you see mounds of trash just dumped along a ravine, down a ravine. And then what happens at the border? We're at the Rio Grande. Trash is everywhere on the Mexican side. There's trash, but when they cross, they just dump all their stuff on the path that they cut through the bamboo like weeds that are along the border, and they just trash everywhere. And it's just a different mentality. I mean, for them, it's not a big deal. They don't. Well, that's just what we did in Guatemala.
I don't understand though our attitude, because existentially their decision was things are not going well for me and my family in Mexico, or especially Central America. I don't like the protocols. It doesn't give me freedom, security, economic opportunity. And so I'm going to come to take a big risk and come in illegally to a different country that's the antithesis of everything I'm leaving behind. And yet when I come into the new country, I have no immediate desire to adopt the very protocols that will make me secure, prosperous, and free in a way I wasn't at home. And then we, the host, allow that to happen. In the old days, you had to be assimilated very quickly and integrated. But why would anybody want to come and replicate the conditions of their own country they're fleeing from? That's what doesn't make sense about I think that's what bothers everybody, and that's why Trump's ideas about immigration appeal to people. It wasn't that they were anti-foreigner. They were pro-law, and they wanted people to embrace a country that they'd already chosen to enter. And yet when they entered, there were certain ideas or attitudes or protocols that suggested that they were owed something, or they were not going to readily become American, or they were going to be part of the identity politics industry. And that's really foreign to the idea of the melting pot. And people rebel against that. They find it ingratitude. They find it unacceptable. And that's what gets people really fired up. I know that when I'm here, and I'm not a very emotional guy, but when I go in town and I go to my cleaner and everybody's speaking Spanish, and the cars in the parking lot all have Mexican flags on.
Oh, yeah.
And people walk out of the cleaners and they throw their McDonald's sack right on the gutter. That gets me really angry.
Oh, no, I get enraged.
Wow.
I get it. You know what I do? This happens in D.C. all the time, and I'm going to get myself hurt. I know I'm going to get myself. You know what I do? I pick it up, and then I say, "Oh, excuse me, you dropped something." My kids are like, "You're going to get killed," but it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I'm a conservationist. I love animals and nature, and I don't care if you're American or whatever you are. But this idea that you can just throw stuff on the ground, but again, it's like the broken windows theory. It's the same thing. You're right. When you violate a law and you're rewarded for it with access and entrance and a paper. So when they cross the border, what happens, Victor? We're talking to Victor Davis Hanson. What happens is they get taken to a processing center. They're separated by, okay, this is a family unit. All your family units are here. The single males, adults, are over here. Then you have the teenagers, unaccompanied minors here. Then you have the young unaccompanied minors. So not many of those, but they're all separated in separate rooms, right? Then once they're processed, they are given a piece of paper, and it's basically a government sheet from DHS, Department of Homeland Security, that then allows them to travel. Like even people who don't have an identification, they're allowed to travel on planes, because most of them come without any ID.
I don't understand it. Yesterday I was talking to somebody in my community, and they're having a new law, as you know, in California, that you have until fall of 2020 to get a new driver's license that will allow you to travel. Californians don't anymore because we allow illegal aliens to have them. This person was telling me that her brother and she can't get one because they use different names, and they've never really had to have an accurate name. They're illegal. But I said to them, if I used a false name and a false Social Security number, do you realize I'd be fired from where I work? She said, really? I said, yes, I would. And I guess, again, that asymmetry that people, when have all these fake names and fake IDs, we say, well, that's what we make them do, or that's what they have to do. And you say, no, that's a felony. And every other American is asking for equity under the law. And we're not getting it because they abide by a set of rules. And for some reason, people who enter the country illegally don't have to abide by the same rules that citizens do. It's like we just said, there's no difference between citizenship and residency. They're the same thing, and especially not illegal residency. It really erodes the whole old ancient idea of being a citizen. That was a privilege, and there were certain rights and responsibilities. and it doesn't matter anymore. You're just simply on American soil. You get counted in the census. You can vote in a local election. The law doesn't apply to you through a particular group. And it's really scary, because when you lose the idea of the privilege of citizenship, then you don't have a country.
No, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's diluted. And a lot of people think, well, what's the point? Like, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can get a scholarship to school. You get a scholarship to a college.
Absolutely.
Dartmouth and all these schools, they're all giving scholarships to people who are undocumented. So
one of my big frustrations was teaching at Cal State Fresno for 22 years and having Hispanic students from Arizona and Nevada who paid 3 times the in-state tuition rate as out-of-state legal American citizens, and then illegal aliens in my classes in California that were paying 1/3 the cost of a U.S. citizen from a different state. And it got them very angry, and it was crazy. And I don't know.
Victor,
it's gone
before
so far now, it's been institutionalized.
Right. And they want people to be numb to it. Well, what are you going to do? And throw up your hands, and what are you going to do? Before we let you go, Victor, I have to ask you about Trump versus China. Biden obviously has forgotten. He changes his comment day to day, depending on what audience he's speaking to. But Biden obviously has to be pressed on the Trans-Pacific Partnership because he and Obama are all for it. Hillary, you know that it wasn't popular because Hillary ran against it. So Biden's gotten away with not even coming out on it one way or another on the TPP so far.
No, he hasn't. And, he said China's not a threat. And then we had this big psychodrama about Huawei and the telecommunications giant. But what we didn't even talk about is this month alone, I think the guy's name was Lee and Mallory. We had 2 pretty high-ranking CIA agents that both pled guilty to China espionage from within the CIA, right in the Virginia court. And then this whole thing about, well, Trump is, ginning up an argument. I can remember during the Obama period when Michael Hayden, the CIA director, 2013, said, wow, we can't have anybody in the intelligence agencies using any Huawei telecommunications devices because they're not secure and their data networks will transmit information to China. And there's no difference between that company and the Chinese government. And then I remember, I don't know if you remember that Obama's head of cybersecurity is now Huawei's greatest lobbyist in the United States. So China's insidious, and they have so much power, and they hide behind, almost as if they're hiding. When you call them out, they say, well, you're racist, or, identity politics arguments, or they use libertarian economic thinkers or departments in the United States, and they say, you know what, deficits don't matter, or we're giving cheap goods to the American middle class, or you're right, this is not sustainable, and it makes you more competitive. But they're like a chameleon. They just absorb all these American arguments to justify this asymmetrical cheating on trade and this mercantile trajectory. And it's really scary how many people in the United States are apologists for it.
Now, do you notice that Canada is even getting nervous about the Chinese investment there? There's a big piece I tweeted out from the Globe and Mail, a big editorial about how Canadians are being bamboozled by the promise of China. With connections to China comes real costs. It's not just an economic opportunity; it's also a threat. I mean, Trump. You and I were so far ahead of the curve on China. It's like not even funny. It's like decades and decades ahead of everyone else. But it's nice to see that finally people are beginning to wake up. Even if not Joe Biden in the moment, but a lot of people are waking up to China.
No, they're right. They are. Where I work at the Hoover Institution, you never heard anything but China just has a few speed bumps on its way to Carmel. And now all of a sudden, wow, the more money we gave them, they didn't liberalize. The more money we gave them, they became more authoritarian at home and abroad. And this is bad. And I can't believe the people at Stanford University that are suddenly, after Trump threw the rock in the Chinese window, that they feel liberated. Of course, they never mention the word Trump for their new audacity, but that's the reason that they're suddenly coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. Well, VDH, it's great to talk to you. We're going to talk to you before the June 6th D-Day invasion anniversary, and also we talk about Korea as well. So we still have a lot to talk about. But thank you so much for joining us. We love having you on. You're